And I spent 10 years speaking to doctors and speaking to uh, lay people about saliva testing. But I stopped doing that about 10 years ago, really because it wore me out, flying to different places, sitting in airports, having canceled flights, all of that. So I stopped. And when my patients came and told me, hey, look, I've been hearing some things on Instagram and TikTok, and they're talking about how blood testing works. And I had one patient who tried it, and it just messed her all up. And she came back and asked me to redo what we had done before. And I asked, why did you stop? Well, I saw these people on Instagram, and they were telling me about blood testing and pellets and all this. And I decided, look, I've got to fight fire with fire. I've got to go on social media and try and debunk a lot of these myths and this misinformation, because I've been doing this for 30 years. When it wasn't popular, nobody was really doing it, but now it's popular, and a lot of people have jumped on the bandwagon. And I'm just going to say it like it is. They don't know what they're doing. They don't. And they're putting out a lot of misinformation, and I've got to go where they are. That's what my patient told me. She said, you've got to get on Instagram and TikTok. And by the popularity that I've gained on TikTok, I know that patient was right. And again, I do a lot of things because a patient has asked me to do it. And this is one of those things. So I listen to my patients, because when I listen to them, a lot of times they tell me something that I don't know. A patient is the one who introduced me to saliva testing and introduced me to bioidentical hormones. So I make it a fact. I make it a practice to listen to my patients. So this is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to educate you, the public, about the difference in blood and saliva testing, so you can go in and demand the proper testing when you feel like you have a hormone problem. So I'm counting on you to grasp this information and to take it to the doctors or whoever, because I do a live question and answer every Tuesday night at 7 o'clock in Ageless Blueprint. And one of my patients who've been with me for a long time, she said, all I know is saliva testing. Dr. Taylor, I never even did any testing until I came to you. And she said, I try to tell my other doctors, and they keep trying to convince me to stop. They keep trying to tell me that it's wrong. And she knows it. I mean, she knows that that's not true. And she said she's just tired of talking to them. And I understand, because I've gotten to that point too. But I believe that if enough patients go in and start demanding proper testing, that doctors will have to change their mind. So I'm counting on you. So let's start, Rebel. All right. I'm just going to be blunt that your blood hormone test is dead wrong. They're just wrong. Okay. For decades, we've relied on blood tests to measure hormones. At least most docs have. Now, making critical health decisions based on these results. But what if the foundation of hormone testing has been fundamentally flawed all along? Today, we'll explore the standard blood hormone test might be misleading you, and what alternatives could transform your health journey. And I'm telling you, to be honest with you, I did an OBGYN residency at Emory University here, and we never drew blood to look at blood levels. We never even considered looking at blood levels. And I'll show you why in just a second. So I never drew blood levels for hormones. And all of the residents, everybody who trained with me, we just guessed. Okay. And here's the guess. If you're premenopausal, if you haven't gone through menopause yet, and you have any type of hormone problem, we're going to give you birth control pills. And the only difference is what type of birth control pill are you going to take. But if you have endometriosis, if you have PMS, if you have irregular bleeding, whatever you have, we gave you birth control pills. Now, when you're postmenopausal, what we did was we gave you Premarin and Provera, which is an estrogen and a type of progestin or type of progesterone. If you still had your uterus, we gave you estrogen and progesterone, or Permin and Provera. If you didn't have your uterus, we said, hey, you just need to take estrogen, because we thought all women who are postmenopausal were estrogen deficient. But we found out that's not true. And if you look at saliva testing, you will know that that's not true. So I don't want to get ahead of myself. I'm trying to stay on point so that you can get every detail. But I just want you to know that your blood tests are dead wrong. And I will debate anybody on that fact. Okay, let's go to the next slide. I think I control it. All right. Why didn't we draw blood tests when I was a resident? Because the textbook says that blood hormone testing has its limits. The medical literature says serum steroid hormone levels have limited clinical useful information. This isn't a fringe opinion. It's straight from the medical textbook. There's a textbook called GYN Endocrinology, and it was written by Leon Spiroff. And that's no doubt about it, the gold standard when we're looking at female endocrinology, female hormones. And it says blood testing or serum testing has no clinical value. All right. Now, practicing physicians know the truth. During my entire OBGYN residency, we virtually never drew blood hormone levels. It's not virtual. We never did for a diagnosis or treatment monitoring. Why? Because experienced physicians understand their limitations. They don't match the symptoms. Have you ever experienced clear hormone symptoms while the blood test results came back normal? This disconnect isn't rare. So just think, women, have you ever gone in to an OBGYN's office with any kind of complaint and they draw a blood test and they show you a level and say, oh, here's your problem. You have too much estrogen and not enough progesterone. It's not done. And if it is done, they come up with excuses why the blood testing and the symptoms don't match. And I think that's the next slide. Can you go to that one? Let me see if I can control my slides. All right. So this is why saliva works better. Saliva testing measures the free bioactive hormones, the only ones that actually affect your tissue and create symptoms. So let me explain this. So hormones, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, and cortisol, they are fat soluble hormones. That means they are made from cholesterol. That's why even though these commercials try and act like cholesterol is bad for you, and it is if it's too high, but cholesterol is important. You make a lot of your brain cells are primarily a lot of fat, but also your hormones are made from cholesterol, so they are fat soluble. Your blood is water soluble, and everybody knows that oil and water, they don't mix. So what happens is when the hormone comes from the ovary, it gets packaged in something called sex hormone binding globulin. I relate sex hormone binding globulin like a FedEx truck. So it gets picked up from the FedEx truck. What the blood measures is how much estrogen is in the FedEx truck. Okay. So there's a lot of packages in the FedEx truck, but only a few packages get delivered to the tissue. And let me tell you what the difference is. Okay. So let's say there are 100 packages in the FedEx truck. So that's what you see in the blood rolling around. All right. Now, only 1 to 2% of those hormones actually get delivered to the tissue. All right. So out of that 100, 1 to 2 packages get delivered to the tissue, whatever that is. And what we're measuring is in saliva. So you get packages of estrogen and you should get packages of progesterone to balance each other out. All right. But let's just think. Let's say 3 packages get off the FedEx truck. All right. And the normal in the FedEx truck is anywhere from 0 to 100. And that's considered to be normal. All right. So if I know it's a long explanation, but I want you to understand this. If 3 packages or 4 packages get off the truck, now the amount in the tissue has doubled. It's gone from 2 to 4. But in the FedEx truck, there's 96 packages. And so because it's in the normal range, we say, oh, it's fine. You have plenty of packages. All right. Now, but in the saliva, I get to see, wow, there's 4 packages of estrogen, and I only have enough progesterone to balance out 2 of them. Okay. It is two of them. All right. Somebody asked the question. We'll get to that. Okay. So now you're out of balance. You got 4 estrogen packages and only 2 progesterone packages, but the FedEx truck looked like it's totally fine. So that's the difference. Okay. You can't measure what's floating around on the FedEx truck. You have to measure how many packages did I get delivered. And if we know the normal range and the balance in the saliva gland, we can extrapolate that out and say, wow, there should be the normal balance in other tissues. That is the difference. Now, let me tell you what happens in menopause, and I'm going to get to that slide. In menopause, there's no estrogen being picked up from the ovary because the ovary is not producing anything anymore. You're menopausal. However, the fat tissue can take testosterone and androstenedione that comes from your adrenal gland, and it can convert that. It's called aromatization into estrogen. So I believe God made it where women could maintain their femininity and really be able to create estrogen through their fat tissue. That's why most women have more fat tissue when you're talking about relatively. They have more fat tissue than men because they need that fat tissue because it's an extra production center for estrogen, even if the ovary doesn't make it. So now you have to say, well, now if I have estrogen coming from the ovary, and then I also have estrogen coming from my fat tissue, and you never see the estrogen coming from your fat tissue in the blood because it's in the tissue. Now you have all of this estrogen, and you may not have enough progesterone to balance it out. So that's it. It's a long explanation, but I need to get this across because there's so much misinformation about this. So let's go to the next slide. So now here's what happens when you do a blood test and they don't match your symptoms. So they'll tell you that, oh, hormones change too much. You've likely heard that hormone levels fluctuate too much to measure accurately. This misleading claim ignores a fundamental reality. Everything in your body fluctuates. Blood sugar, sodium, potassium, all change throughout the day, yet we still test them. So your amount of sodium and potassium, all that, it's constantly changing. But we know what the range is. And the reason why this works in the blood, because they're not fat soluble. They are actually water soluble. So these you can measure, blood sugar, sodium, they're perfectly fine to measure in the blood. But when they're fat soluble, it goes back to that scenario that I just explained. Because there is a steady state of hormone in the saliva. Okay, it fluctuates, but then there's an average. In the test I use, you collect it 4 times over the day. They pool it all together, and they get an average or a steady state, just like you do with your sodium, potassium. But you have to look